During one of my first trips to Japan, I made an experience that changed my views about how different people perceive beauty. It had been a really, really long week. It was Friday. I was looking forward to get back home in the evening. And somebody told us that the meeting on Friday had been postponed to Monday. So I ended up having to stay in Tokyo for the weekend. And I thought, well, at least it'll give me the chance to get to know the city, do a little bit of sightseeing. And at the same time, a Japanese colleague approached me and asked me whether I would like to join him and his family on a trip to see the cherry blossoms. And my idea of spending a weekend in Tokyo didn't necessarily involve watching flowers, but I thought to myself, well, I've heard that this is important in Japan, so why not? On the following day, I was in the train with him and his family. We got to the outskirts of Tokyo, and suddenly I was really overwhelmed. There were so many people doing exactly the same thing, taking pictures of the cherry blossoms, but I was also impressed by the beauty of it. I'd never experienced anything like that before in my life. I also understood that there was something more profound in this cherry blossom for the Japanese people. They call it sakura. And sakura is a symbol for change. Is how something so ephemeral as a cherry blossom can be born out of nothing and suddenly die within the space of several days. It's a symbol for the inevitability of death and renewal. And it's closely associated with Buddhism, and it manifests itself in other forms of art like poetry, etc. Now, it was a good example for me of how people that have different cultural backgrounds, different upbringings, education, different historical baggage, perceive things differently. It could be beauty, it could be any kinds of aesthetics, design, it could be, sorry, I just pressed the button. I did something I shouldn't have done. Sorry for that. I'll keep on talking. How different people perceive things differently. And again, it's not just only the design, the beauty side of it, it's also the aesthetics, but also how different people perceive intuition differently. What is intuitive for others may not be intuitive for others. What is simple, what is complex. In any case, that's what drives, if you like, diversity, which is what makes the world tick, makes the world an exciting place to be. But it's also at the center of big headaches by multinational companies, particularly companies in the consumer electronics space where the design plays a very, very important element, and companies that want to sell to the whole global market space. So for many years, companies, traditionally, big companies, have approached this problem by taking one of these three approaches. Either you sell to a common denominator, basically you pick all the countries that you want to sell into the world, you average them out, and you produce a design against that average, right? And you know that that design is going to be more or less liked by every people, but at the risk of not exciting anybody in particular. And that has been followed, as far as I'm concerned, by the car manufacturing industry for many years, where all the cars actually look very, very similar wherever you go. The second is about taking that a step further and actually introducing geographical diversity. So you take all the countries again and you cluster them in different groupings that are more or less homogeneous. You end up with 7 or 8 clusters, and you produce a variation of the design to appeal to each of these clusters. So you end up with a little bit more complexity, if you like, in your portfolio, but you may have a higher likelihood of succeeding because you're creating that variation. That has been followed by the mobile phone industry for many, many years, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. And the last one is about producing a design that you know is going to be accepted by one single country. And this is not just a country. You pick a country that is if you like, the cultural reference, the cultural icon for everything or for a category in particular that you're trying to sell into. That, for the largest part of the 20th century, has been the United States, you like to think. So a lot of companies have produced designs that would be appealing to the average consumer in the United States. And that cultural weight is actually shifting towards the East, towards China and Greater China. So you would find that more and more companies use China as a reference to produce designs that are accepted. If you are a rice cooker manufacturer, for example, and if you can crack the Chinese market for rice cookers, then the expectation is that other countries will follow at some stage. Now, how has the mobile phone industry tackled that issue? And I choose the mobile phone industry because that's the one I know best, But it's also because it's an interesting case study. It's about 20, 25 years old, but it has evolved incredibly. It's a very dynamic industry. There's a lot of technology-led disruption that has happened in the last 25 years, more so than if you take television in 80 years. It's also a global phenomenon. Everybody, you could say everybody now these days has a mobile phone anywhere in the world. And it's also what I call a contemporary industry, in the sense that we, people of my generation at least, or a little bit older, we still remember the beginnings of it. We don't have to go back to the history books to understand what were the conditions that were there at the moment where this industry started to appear. We remember, and we can draw our own conclusions. So let's start from the beginning. Let's start from the pioneer. It's not a very exciting phone, but it was the first handheld cellular phone. Now, there had been portable phones before, but you needed a car to be able to carry them. This was the first handheld device. And it was launched in 1983 by Motorola. It weighed almost a kilogram, as you can see. It costed a lot of money. Design per se is not incredibly fantastic. It's not very exciting, but it was not about the design. It was about the technology feasibility. It was about whether technology could deliver the promise of mobile telephony. At that time, people thought that this was going to be a very niche product. You know, who would want to make calls on the go? You know, this is really going to be only for the small group of people. Inevitably, the technology got better. You know, the electronics and the mechanics of the phone got more compressed. They became more affordable as well, and all the ingredients were being there to turn this into a global phenomenon. Now, something had to happen before it became a mass market phenomenon, and that is the hardware design. Hardware design had to deliver. Hardware design had to make this technology much less intimidating, more human, more intimate. And this was what I call the golden era, the golden age of hardware designers in the mobile telephony industry. So you had all these different form factors, shapes. If somebody at that time, and this was more or less early 2000s, got into a shop, somebody would buy a mobile phone because of the color, because of the form factor, the finishing materials, the sizes of the keypad. It was all very hardware-centric purchase decisions that would be made. Now, if you as a mobile phone manufacturer could deal with that variability very well and very profitably, then you would be a very successful company. And the paramount example here is Nokia. Nokia at that point had 50 or 60 different models in its portfolio. To appeal and to be able to play in the global space, they wanted to target all geographies, all price points, all consumer segments, and they needed a big portfolio to do that. There were 30 or 40 new model introductions every year. I was working at the time for a Japanese company, and we didn't have that big budget. We couldn't build, you know, incredibly large portfolios. So we were really thinking hard whether with one single design we could sell to the whole world, right? It made more sense for us. And we got together the Chinese team, the Japanese team, and the European team, which I was representing at the time. And we got together for several weeks, and we came to the conclusion that it was really impossible. It was really impossible for several reasons. First of all, because the taste, the fashion element of it. You know, in Asia, people liked clamshell phones, whereas in the West, in Europe, people liked monoblock form factors. But it was not just only that. It was also the ergonomics. So in Asia, people tend to have smaller hands, smaller fingers. They have a higher level of dexterity also with the fingers. And in the West, people have bigger hands and bigger fingers. So just the design of the keypad, to come to a uniform design of a keypad that could appeal everybody was an impossibility. But also I remember the menu screens at the time, they were really simple. In Asia, people were used to dealing with a higher level of complexity at the surface of the menu screen. And as a result, the menus were very shallow, they were not very deep because most of the functionality would be at the top. And in the West, we wouldn't be able to we were not used to deal with that level of complexity at the top. So the menus inevitably would be very, very deep. So we would be navigating through the menu structures to get to the functionality that we were looking for. So all these changes made us realize that this was a no-go. It was impossible. But how many times have we been proven wrong in this industry? In 2007, Apple introduced the iPhone, and with it, a complete new paradigm in user-centric design. And they did several things right. But the first thing that they did very well was the simplification of the hardware design. So remember all these different models that you saw in the previous chart. This was just one single model, and with one single model, they managed to appeal everybody, regardless of cultural background or geography. And the way that they did is by simplifying it. Everybody understands a screen. It's so simple that everybody gets it. And they were able to do that because they transferred all the complexity that was before in the hardware design to the software, to the graphical user interface that we'll talk more a little bit later. Now, the effect that the simplification of this hardware design had is what I call also hardware design commoditization. So if today you pick several smartphones, you put them together, you switch them off, and they all look pretty much the same. It's almost as if the ability for design to play a differentiating role has moved somewhere else. It's not anymore in the hardware design. And that somewhere else is in the graphical user interface. Now remember I was telling you about all these problems that we had with the different levels of menu structures when I was working for the Japanese company. Well, forget about all of that. This was just a simple collection of icons. And these were icons that were so human, so intuitively designed that everybody understood them. And this is key. It's simplicity as the key for universal acceptance from a design perspective. So they did not only do that, they also invented a gesture language to be able to interact with the screen. You could swipe the screen to go from one page to the other, one picture to the other. You could pinch the screen to zoom in and out. These are all very human-like movements. And the proof that they were so simple that everybody could understand it is that even 3, 4, 5-year-olds, how many have you seen taking an iPhone actually being able to operate it? It's incredible. That wouldn't have happened before. Now, in the last 3 or 4 years, there has been an incredible amount of investment by most of the mobile phone companies to try and close the gap between where they were before and what the iPhone brought to market. We've seen the introduction of Android, a consolidation of software platforms, a certain convergence in user interfaces as well. And you can almost say that today, if you go into a shop, they all more or less look the same as well from a graphical user interface. They're all very good. So the role of design as a differentiating element has moved again somewhere else. We moved from the hardware design, from the hardware to the software, the graphical user interface, and now it has moved somewhere else. And that somewhere else is what we call the cloud. The cloud is now where new experiences are designed. These are experiences that you will live through your phone, not in the phone itself. And if we take a couple of steps back, this is what I call the redistribution of intelligence or redistribution of complexity. So we started off with these complicated hardware designs at the very beginning that got simpler and simpler because they had to be universally accepted, right? And my view is that they will tend towards invisibility at some stage. That complexity was transferred to the software on the phone, to the graphical user interface, which is now becoming a screen to experience things that are designed outside the phone in the cloud. Now, how does this affect how we perceived or have perceived design in our homes? If you actually zoom out of all of these and go beyond just mobile phones, I would split it into 3. And the first one is what I call the home before the boxes, the home before technology arrived in our homes. And what was the role of design then? Well, I think people perceive design through artwork, paintings, statues, ornament, plants. It was designed for the sake of design. It was designed not at the service of anything else. It was designed for its own value. Somewhat in the 1920s and beyond, we started to have radios in our homes and then televisions, and the home started to get full of boxes. This is the home of the boxes, right? This is the home where, for example, somebody like Hector will have a really lot of fun because he could open them up. But this was, we found that a house was being populated with all these, right? And the role of design here was to make those boxes look nice because there was nowhere else that you could hide them. That was the predominant role of design at the time. Now, this is where we're going. We're not there yet, but we call it the home after the boxes. Because I do believe that they will continue to be improvements in technology, as with the mobile phones, where improvements in technology helped reduce the hardware footprint of that technology, that will happen also in other technologies that are around us in our home. So, we will regain back our space, and we will probably start to enjoy design as we enjoyed design before the technology or the boxes arrived into our home. And I think in the most immediate future, things like improvements in micromechanics, microelectronics, sensor networks that create smart houses, technologies that make screen so thin that you can almost embed them into walls and they become invisible. Loudspeakers, where the technology is becoming so compressed that you can hide them anywhere without compromising the quality of the audio. This will give back our space. We'll have certainly a lot of space, because the boxes will not only be there, and we can enjoy design for the sake of design, design at the service of design, not at the service of anything else. Now, if I project further into the future, I do believe that design will start to become, or technology will start to become designed around us, not around our homes. What I mean by that is that, as connectivity becomes ubiquitous, not just only mobile phones, but just about any product or appliance that you have in your home, as wearable technology becomes improved, even, it's not just only the clothes that you wear, but also technology that you can wear in your skin or even under your skin, what we're starting to call epidermal electronics, holographic user interfaces that let you have 3D, immersive experiences everywhere you go. Telepathy-based technology, telepathy as they call it now. All these things will allow you to have the experience that you had to stay at home, where you had to stay at home before, because that's where the technology was, that's where all the boxes were. These new technologies will allow you to actually leave the home. It will break the chains that keep you attached to your home, and you can have a similar kind of experiences without compromising anything anywhere you like, not necessarily only in your home. And ideally, you would have time to enjoy designs that you cannot find in your home. You find in nature, more authentic designs, more organic designs, and hopefully enjoy many more Sakuras as well. Thank you very much.